They whisper that the red moon ritual is a mercy killing, a sacred way to cleanse the pack of its weakest links. But what they don't tell you is that some wolves aren't weak at all. They're just waiting for the right moon to show the world what happens when you try to extinguish a flame that was always meant to burn the entire sky. The night Mira Ashford was chosen for the ritual, she didn't cry. She had run out of tears 3 years ago. The stone circle at the heart of the Emberclaw territory had witnessed countless deaths over the centuries. But tonight, it would host something the ancient wolves never anticipated. Mira knelt in the center, wrists bound with silver-laced rope that burned her skin with each breath, each subtle movement sending fresh waves of agony up her arms. Around her, the pack gathered in silent judgment. She could feel their eyes on her, some pitying, most satisfied. Finally, the defective Omega would be removed from their bloodline. Finally, they could stop pretending she had any value beyond the menial labor she performed in the pack kitchens. Mira Ashford, chieftain, Baldric's voice boomed across the clearing, his weathered face showing no emotion. He'd sentenced dozens to this ritual over his 40-year reign. One more Omega meant nothing to him. You have been chosen by the Council of Ash to undergo the Red Moon ritual. Do you accept your fate with honor? What a joke. As if she had a choice. As if honor meant anything, when you were being executed for the crime of being born wrong. I accept, she whispered, because the alternative was being torn apart by the pack enforcers before the moon even rose. At least the ritual promised a quick death. Probably. In the crowd, she caught sight of Soren Blackwater, the pack's lead enforcer, and her primary tormentor for the past 5 years. His scarred face twisted into something approximating a smile. Beside him stood his sister, Lyric, whose delicate features hid a cruelty that rivaled her brother's. They'd made her life a living nightmare, accidentally, spilling boiling water on her hands, spreading rumors that she was cursed, ensuring she received the smallest food portions and the worst sleeping quarters in the pack house. The weak must be culled, Soren had told her just yesterday, while shoving her into a mud puddle outside the kitchens. It's nature's way, little mouse. You should thank us for ending your misery. But it was Lyric's parting words that still echoed in her mind. At least when you're dead, we won't have to smell your failure anymore. Mira's grandmother, Vesper, stood at the edge of the circle, her ancient eyes glistening with unshed tears. She was the only wolf who'd ever shown Mira kindness, who'd insisted there was more to her story than a failed first shift at 18. But even Vesper couldn't save her from this. No one could. The Red Moon ritual was absolute. Created centuries ago to test the strength of questionable wolves, it involved surviving 3 trials under the blood moon's light. The first trial was endurance, kneeling in the silver circle, while the moon's power pressed down on your wolf spirit like a mountain. Most collapsed within minutes, their wolves crushed by the pressure. The second trial was transformation, shifting into your wolf form while your body was already weakened. Those who couldn't shift died screaming as their bones broke without completing the change. The third trial? No one really knew because no Omega had ever survived the first 2 to find out. The ritual had a perfect record, 100% fatality rate for wolves of her designation. Let the Red Moon bear witness? Baldric intoned, raising his arms as the moon began to rise, massive, blood-red, and hungry. Let the weak fall and the strong endure. The pressure hit her like a physical blow. Mira gasped, her vision tunneling as something vast and terrible focused its attention on her. Her wolf, that pathetic malformed creature that had never fully emerged, whimpered in the depths of her consciousness. Please, she begged silently, just let it be quick. But as the crimson moonlight washed over her skin, something stirred. Something that had been sleeping. Something that was definitely not quick, not merciful, and certainly not what anyone expected. The ritual had begun, and Mira Ashford was about to discover that some rules were made to be shattered. 3 days before the ritual, Mira had been scrubbing blood from the feast hall floors. Wolf challenges always left a mess when Vesper found her alone. Child, her grandmother whispered urgently, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. Come with me. Now. They slipped through the servants' corridors to Vesper's quarters, a small room that smelled of herbs and old leather. Her grandmother locked the door, then pulled out a wooden box Mira had never seen before. Your mother left this for you, Vesper said, her wrinkled hands trembling as she opened it. Inside lay a silver pendant shaped like a crescent moon, and beneath it, a letter written in elegant script. "Mama?" Mira breathed. Elara Ashford had died when Mira was 15, just 3 years before her catastrophic first shift attempt. The pack said she died of shame, knowing her daughter would be defective. "Your mother didn't die of shame," Vesper said sharply, as if reading her thoughts. "She died protecting you. This pendant, never take it off, especially during the ritual." "What ritual? Grandmother, what are you?" "They're going to choose you for the Red Moon ritual in 3 days. I've seen the council's sealed orders." Vesper's eyes, usually so calm, were wild with urgency. "Baldric thinks you're a stain on the pack's reputation. He wants you gone, but he wants it to look honorable." Mira's blood ran cold. "But I'll die. Everyone dies in the ritual." "Everyone like you has died," Vesper corrected. She pressed the pendant into Mira's palm, and it felt oddly warm, almost alive. "But you're not like the others. Your mother bound your true nature to save your life. This pendant is the key." "Bound my what? Grandmother, you're not making sense." "Listen to me, girl." Vesper gripped her shoulders with surprising strength. "The Ashford bloodline is ancient. Older than Emberclaw. Older than the territorial divisions. Your mother was of the lunar sage line wolves who could speak to the moon itself, who could channel its power directly." Mira stared at her grandmother as if she'd gone mad. "Lunar sages are myths, stories to entertain children. Myths don't leave behind artifacts." Vesper tapped the pendant. "The other packs hunted your mother's family for generations. They feared wolves who couldn't be controlled by normal alpha dominance. By the time Elara was born, she was the last of her line. She bound her power, hid among us, married your father to blend in." "Father knows about this?" Vesper's expression hardened. "Garrick is a coward who values his position more than his daughter. When you were born, showing signs of the lunar sage gift, Elara had to make a choice: let you develop naturally and watch you be hunted, or bind your power so deeply that even you wouldn't know it existed. But my first shift wasn't a failure, it was a cage shattering." Vesper cupped Mira's face gently. "Your wolf isn't weak, child. It's been trying to break through a binding that's kept it suppressed since birth. The pain you felt wasn't from weakness, it was from strength trying to emerge against magical restraints." Mira wanted to believe her, desperately. But 3 years of being called defective, broken, useless, it had carved deep scars into her soul. "Even if you're right, how does this help me survive the ritual?" The Red Moon ritual was designed by the lunar sages themselves, centuries ago. Not as a test of strength, but as an awakening ceremony. Vesper's eyes gleamed with something like hope. "The blood moon's power will shatter your binding, but you must survive long enough for the awakening to complete. And if I can't, then your mother's sacrifice was for nothing." Vesper pressed the letter into her hands. "Read this when you're alone. She explains everything, including why the Alpha King has been searching for someone like you for the past 5 years. "The Alpha King? What does Damon Stormcrown have to do with power/Cinerus?" A knock at the door made them both freeze. "Vesper?" The chieftain requests Mira's presence in the council chamber. Immediately. It was already happening. They were going to announce her selection for the ritual. Vesper pressed the pendant into Mira's hand and closed her fingers around it. "Wear it. Trust your blood. And remember, sometimes the thing that makes you different is the only thing that can save you." As Mira was escorted to the council chamber, the pendant warm against her skin beneath her shirt, she wondered if hope was just another word for delusion. But she wore it anyway, because what else did she have left to lose? The council chamber reeked of old power and older prejudices. Mira stood in the center of the circular room, 5 council members seated in elevated chairs around her, like judges at an execution. Chieftain Baldric presided from the highest seat, his gray muzzle and cold eyes marking him as a wolf who'd survived through ruthlessness rather than wisdom. "Mira Ashford," he began without preamble. "The council has deliberated on your status within the Emberclaw pack. Your inability to shift properly, your weak constitution, and your burden on pack resources have been noted." She kept her eyes down, knowing any sign of defiance would only make this worse. Around the chamber, she could feel the satisfaction radiating from certain wolves. Soren leaned against the wall, arms crossed, barely containing his grin. "However," Baldric continued, and something in his tone made her look up, We have received word that Alpha King Damon Stormcrown will be passing through our territory in 2 days' time. The announcement sent ripples of excitement through the chamber. The Alpha King rarely traveled through smaller pack territories. His presence was both an honor and a threat. One misstep, and he could absorb their pack into his vast kingdom. Every unmated wolf of age will be presented to His Majesty. Counselor Maris announced, her sharp features arranged in practiced diplomacy. This is a tremendous opportunity for our pack. Mira's stomach sank. She knew where this was going. Naturally, Baldric said, his voice dripping with false regret, we cannot present our pack's deficiency to the Alpha King. It would reflect poorly on all of us. Therefore, the Council has decided to resolve this matter before his arrival. You're going to kill me so the Alpha King doesn't see me, Mira said flatly. No point in pretending anymore. Soren pushed off the wall, his voice mockingly scandalized. Kill you? Chieftain, she accuses us of murder. Not murder, Baldric corrected smoothly. The Red Moon ritual is a sacred tradition. If you survive, your place in the pack will be secured. If you don't, he shrugged, then the moon goddess herself has judged you unworthy. Either way, the matter is resolved before the Alpha King's visit. The ritual is tomorrow night, Counselor Thane added. He at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. You'll have today to prepare yourself spiritually. Spiritually. As if prayer would help when silver burned your skin, and the moon's power crushed your wolf into dust. I accept the Council's decision, Mira said, because what else could she say? Good, Baldric dismissed her with a wave. Soren, ensure she's confined to the preparation chamber. We can't have her running off and embarrassing us. As Soren roughly grabbed her arm to escort her out, Vesper's voice rang out from the chamber entrance. I invoke Elder's right to speak, Baldric's jaw tightened. Vesper, this doesn't concern you. This concerns the entire pack's honor, Vesper said, stepping into the chamber with surprising authority for a wolf supposedly past her prime. If we're to present ourselves to the Alpha King, we should know why he travels. Rumor says he searches for something or someone. Wild speculation. Maris waved dismissively. Is it? Vesper's eyes gleamed. My sources say the Alpha King has been visiting every pack in the Northern Territories, examining their unmated wolves with unusual interest. Some say he's seeking his fated mate. Others whisper of an old prophecy about a lunar sage who would Enough! Baldric slammed his fist on the armrest. Lunar sages are extinct. This council deals in reality, not fairy tales. Of course, chieftain. Vesper bowed her head in false submission, but not before shooting Mira a meaningful look. I merely thought we should be prepared for any surprises. As Soren dragged Mira from the chamber, she caught fragments of urgent whispers behind her. Vesper had planted a seed of doubt, but whether it would grow fast enough to matter, she didn't know. The preparation chamber was a stone cell beneath the pack house, cold, dark, and smelling of fear. Every wolf chosen for the ritual spent their last day here. Most went mad from terror. Mira sat on the narrow cot and pulled out her mother's letter with shaking hands. My dearest Mira. It began in script that blurred through her tears. If you're reading this, then my worst fears have come true, and they've chosen you for the ritual. But darling, don't be afraid. This isn't your ending, it's your beginning. The Red Moon ritual was created by our ancestors as a crucible, not a grave. Only those with lunar sage blood can truly survive it, because only our kind can withstand direct communion with the moon's raw power. The pain you've felt your whole life? That was your wolf trying to break free of the binding I placed on her to keep you safe. Tomorrow night, that binding will shatter. Your true wolf will emerge. And when she does, the entire world will see what I always knew, that you are extraordinary. Trust the moon, my love. She's been waiting for you. Your mother, who loved you more than life itself. Mira read the letter 3 times, then pressed it to her chest and wept. Not from fear anymore, but from something that felt dangerously close to hope. Outside her cell, footsteps echoed. The ritual was tomorrow night. And 2 days after that, the Alpha King would arrive just in time to find either her corpse or something the pack had never anticipated. They dragged Mira to the stone circle as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of blood and amber. The entire pack had gathered. This was entertainment for them, a spectacle to break the monotony of their lives. She could hear their whispers, their bets on how quickly she'd fall. 10 minutes. Someone laughed. I give her 10 minutes before she's screaming. Too generous. 5 minutes, tops. Vesper stood at the edge of the circle, her face a mask of forced calm. But Mira could see the terror in her grandmother's eyes, the way her lips moved in silent prayer to gods who'd never answered before. The silver-laced ropes bit into Mira's wrists as Soren bound her in place. He leaned close, his breath hot against her ear. I'm going to enjoy watching you break, little mouse. Maybe I'll keep one of your bones as a souvenir. She didn't respond. Couldn't. Her entire being was focused on the pendant beneath her shirt, warm against her skin like a living heartbeat. Baldric raised his arms to begin the ritual ceremony, but before he could speak, a howl erupted from the forest edge, deep, resonant, and laced with power that made every wolf in the clearing drop to their knees instinctively. All, except Mira, still bound and unable to kneel. Impossible. Baldric breathed, his face going pale. He wasn't supposed to arrive until... From the tree line emerged a wolf that made the breath catch in Mira's throat. Massive didn't begin to describe him. His fur was the color of a midnight storm, black shot through with silver like lightning frozen in time. But it was his eyes that held her captive, molten gold, ancient and knowing, fixed on her with an intensity that should have been terrifying. Instead, something in her chest pulled tight, like a string being tuned to perfect pitch. The wolf shifted mid-stride, and suddenly a man stood where the beast had been. Daemon Stormcrown was everything the legends promised, and nothing like she'd imagined. Tall enough that Baldric looked like a child beside him, with sharp features that suggested both cruelty and honor in equal measure. Scars decorated his bare chest, a map of battles won and challenges conquered. He wore power like other wolves wore fur, effortless and absolute. Alpha King, Baldric stammered, dropping into a deeper bow. We weren't expecting this as a tremendous honor. You're conducting a Red Moon ritual, Daemon said, his voice like thunder rolling across distant mountains. It wasn't a question. His eyes never left Mira's face. On an Omega. Yes, Your Majesty. Standard pack cleansing. Nothing that should concern her name. The command cracked through the air like a whip. Am Mira Ashford, Your Majesty, a defective wolf who is bound in silver during a sacred ritual. Daemon's voice dropped to something dangerously soft as he finally looked at Baldric. Who authorized the use of silver? Power. It's traditional, Your Majesty. To prevent escape, quote, the Red Moon ritual's original texts specify no restraints. Daemon began walking toward the circle, and wolves scrambled out of his path. The trial is meant to test the wolf's strength, not torture them while defenseless. Which pack law scholar authorized this modification? Silence. Mira watched understanding dawn. On several faces, they'd been conducting the ritual wrong for generations, turning a test into an execution method. Daemon reached the silver circle's edge and stopped, his gold eyes boring into hers. What's your name, Omega? Mira, she whispered, then stronger, Mira Ashford. Look at me, Mira. She did, and the world tilted. That string in her chest didn't just tighten it, snapped into place with an audible click that she felt in her bones. His eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise on his otherwise controlled features. Mate, something in her mind whispered, her wolf's voice clearer than it had been in 3 years. Mate, Present Ephraim. Remove the silver, Daemon ordered, his voice rough. Your Majesty, the ritual has already begun, Baldric protested. I said remove it. Daemon's alpha command rolled across the clearing like a physical force, and 3 wolves rushed forward to obey, fumbling with the ropes. When the silver fell away, Mira's skin showed angry red burns where it had touched. Daemon's jaw clenched. Who bound her? Soren stepped forward proudly, clearly missing the danger in the Alpha King's tone. I did, Your Majesty. Standard procedure for... He never finished. Daemon moved faster than Mira's eyes could track, and suddenly Soren was on his knees, the Alpha King's hand around his throat. You burned my Daemon. Caught himself, but not before several sharp-eared wolves gasped. You tortured an Omega before a sacred trial. Give me one reason I shouldn't remove your head from your shoulders. Powers. Mercy, Your Majesty. Soren choked out, all his earlier arrogance evaporated. I didn't know, please. Daemon released him with obvious disgust. You're exiled from this pack. If I see your face again, I'll finish what I started. He turned back to Mira, and his expression softened in a way that seemed to surprise even him. Can you stand? She nodded, rising on shaking legs. The red moon was fully risen now, its light bathing the circle in crimson. She could feel the pressure beginning to build, that terrible weight preparing to crush her wolf. Your Majesty. Baldric tried again, desperation creeping into his voice. Perhaps we should postpone the ritual, that. The ritual continues, Damon said, not looking away from Mira. But I'm staying to witness it. He stepped into the silver circle with her, ignoring the gasps from the crowd. No one entered the circle during the ritual. No one. What are you doing? Mira whispered. His answer was so quiet only she could hear. Making sure you survive long enough to understand what you are. What we are. Thank you for watching. With Maybe and I. Making sure you survive. The pressure crashed down like a tidal wave, and Mira's knees buckled. But before she could fall, Damon was there, his hand on her shoulder, steadying her. And where he touched her, the pendant flared hot against her skin, and something inside her began to wake. The pressure of the red moon felt like drowning in liquid iron. Mira gasped, her vision swimming as the moon's power bore down on her wolf, testing, measuring, crushing, anything weak enough to break. Around the circle, she could dimly hear the pack's murmurs, confusion about why the Alpha King stood beside her, speculation about what this meant. But all of that faded as Damon's hand on her shoulder blazed with warmth, and the pendant her mother left her burned against her chest like a falling star. Breathe, Damon commanded softly, his voice cutting through the chaos in her mind. The moon isn't your enemy. Stop fighting it. It's killing me, she gasped, feeling her wolf writhing in agony beneath her skin. Persand. It's testing you, there's a difference. His fingers tightened slightly on her shoulder. Your wolf has been caged for too long. The moon is breaking that cage. It's supposed to hurt. Through the red haze of pain, Mira became aware of something else, a connection forming between them where his hand touched her shoulder. She could feel his wolf, vast and powerful, pressing against her consciousness, not to dominate, but to support, to anchor. That's impossible, she breathed. We're not marked. Fated mates don't need marks to recognize each other, he said. And even through her pain, she heard the wonder in his voice. I've searched for 5 years. Every pack, every territory, looking for the wolf who could stand beside me. And here you are, bound in silver, and about to be executed by fools who don't recognize treasure when it's in their hands. I'm no treasure, Mira managed. I'm broken. Look at me. When she did, his golden eyes blazed with absolute certainty. You are Lunar Sage. The last of an ancient bloodline that terrified every alpha in the territories. Your mother bound your power to save your life, but tonight, that binding ends. Class. The pressure increased, and Mira screamed. Her bones felt like they were splintering, her skin too tight, her wolf clawing desperately to emerge. But something was still holding it back, still keeping her trapped between forms. The pendant, Damon said urgently, somehow understanding. Use it. With trembling fingers, Mira pulled the crescent moon pendant from beneath her shirt. The moment it touched the red moonlight, it exploded with silver radiance, and the binding her mother had placed on her 3 years of magical chains wrapped around her wolf shattered like glass. The transformation hit her like lightning. Where her first shift attempt had been agony and failure, this was agony and triumph. Her body knew exactly what to do now, bones reshaping with purpose instead of confusion, fur erupting in a cascade of silver white that seemed to capture moonlight itself. When the shift completed, Mira stood on 4 legs for the first time in her life, and the world had never looked so clear. She was smaller than most wolves, but her coat shimmered like starlight, each hair catching and refracting the red moon's glow. And when she looked down at her reflection in a puddle, she saw eyes that glowed pure silver, like the pendant that now hung around her wolf's neck. The pack erupted in shocked whispers. Several wolves dropped to their knees instinctively, responding to something primal they didn't understand. Lunar Sage. Vesper breathed, tears streaming down her weathered face. Oh, Alara, you beautiful fool. You hid her so well. Baldric's face had gone from pale to ashen. This can't be. Can't be what? Damon's voice cut across the clearing like a blade. He hadn't shifted, still standing in human form beside Mira's wolf. Can't be that you've been abusing and attempting to execute one of the rarest, most powerful bloodlines in our history? Can't be that your pack is so steeped in ignorance you don't recognize a lunar sage when she stands before you? Your Majesty, we didn't know, Baldric started. You didn't care, Damon corrected. She was an Omega, so you assumed she was worthless. You saw her struggle and called it weakness, when in reality, she was fighting against a magical binding strong enough to suppress the bloodline that once counseled kings. Mira's wolf paced the circle, testing her new form. Everything felt right in a way nothing ever had before. Her senses were sharper than any normal wolf's she could count. Each heartbeat in the clearing, smell the fear and awe radiating from the pack, feel the very earth humming beneath her paws. And she could feel Damon beside her, his presence like the sun to her moon. The second trial, she thought, remembering the ritual's structure. I've completed the first, what's next? As if summoned by her thought, the red moon pulsed, and symbols appeared in the air around the circle, ancient pack script that hadn't been seen in centuries. Glowing like embers, the trial of truth, Damon translated, his voice grim. I should have known. What does it mean? Mira tried to project the thought and was shocked when he clearly heard her. It means the moon will reveal truth about those gathered here. The lunar sages used this trial to judge the packs they counseled, exposing corruption, lies, and hidden sins. He looked at Baldric with something like pity. Chieftain, I suggest you dismiss your pack. What's about to be revealed won't be pleasant. Power? I won't be dictated to in my own territory, Baldric began, but the red moon pulsed again, and his words died. Light erupted from Mira's form, silver radiance that washed across every wolf in the clearing. And where it touched them, their secrets became visible, floating above their heads like ghostly confessions written in moonlight. Sorens showed violence, Omegas beaten behind the pack house, a young wolf's death covered up as an accident. Lyrics revealed poison, jealousy, systematic destruction of rivals through manipulation and lies. But it was Baldric's secrets that made the pack gasp. Embezzlement from pack funds, alliance with rogues to eliminate rival council members. And worst of all, orders to kill Alara Ashford when he'd discovered what she was, carried out 3 years ago when they'd poisoned her slowly over months. You killed her. Mira's mental voice rang across every wolf's consciousness, clear and terrible. You murdered my mother because you feared what she was, what I could become. Baldric dropped to his knees, all pretense of authority gone. She was dangerous, the old bloodlines had to end. The old bloodlines held you accountable, Damon growled. That's what you really feared. A wolf who could see through your corruption and lies. The pack was in chaos now, wolves turning on their chieftain as his crimes laid bare. But Mira barely noticed. She was staring at her father, Garrick, whose secrets showed something that broke her heart. Knew about the murder, said nothing. Chose position over daughter. You knew, she thought at him, and he flinched from the weight of her mental voice. You knew they killed her, and you let them. I had no choice, Garrick whispered. The pack would have turned on us both. You always have a choice. You chose wrong. The red moon pulsed a final time, and the third trial's nature became clear. Not another test for Mira, but a test for the pack itself. The trial of judgment, Vesper announced, her voice carrying clearly across the shocked silence. The lunar sage will decide the fate of those whose secrets have been revealed. This is the true purpose of the red moon ritual, not to kill the weak, but to empower the just, to cleanse corruption. Every eye turned to Mira. Her wolf stood in the center of the circle, silver coat blazing with captured moonlight, ancient power humming in her bones. And for the first time in her life, Mira Ashford held the power to choose her own fate and everyone else's. The weight of judgment pressed down on Mira's shoulders, heavier than any moon's power. She stood in the silver circle, every wolf's fate balanced on the words she would speak or think, since her mental voice now carried to every mind present. Damon remained beside her, a silent presence of support, but not influence. This was her choice to make. Baldric Emberclaw, she began, her mental voice resonating with a power that made the chieftain whimper. You ordered my mother's death. You've stolen from your pack, conspired with rogues, and eliminated anyone who threatened your position. What do you say in your defense? I did what I had to do. Baldric's voice shook. To keep the pack strong, to maintain order. You maintained your own power at the cost of innocent lives. Mira's wolf moved closer to him, each step deliberate. The pack parted like water before her. My mother was your pack's greatest asset, a lunar sage, who could have protected Emberclaw from threats you couldn't even see. Instead, you poisoned her slowly over months, making it look like illness. You didn't just kill her, you tortured her. She was going to expose me, Baldric finally admitted, the truth spilling out as if he couldn't hold it back under the moon's power. She knew about the Rogue Alliance, the missing funds. She told me she'd give me one chance to confess to the council. I couldn't let that happen. The pack's collective growl rolled like thunder. Wolves who'd followed Baldric for decades now looked at him with betrayal and fury. Garrick Ashford. Mira turned to her father, and her wolf's silver eyes blazed brighter. You knew. You knew they were killing her, and you did nothing. Mira, please. Her father's human form trembled. She made me promise not to interfere. She said if I tried to save her, they'd kill you too. She made me choose. And you chose to save yourself, Mira said coldly. You could have taken me and run. You could have contacted other packs, sought sanctuary. Instead, you stayed comfortable in your beta position and let your daughter believe she was worthless for 3 years. I was trying to protect you. You were protecting your status. The truth hung in the air, undeniable under the red moon's light. You let me suffer because it was easier than risking your comfort. Vesper stepped forward, her ancient eyes wet with tears. Elara made us all promise not to tell you. She said the binding would only hold if you truly believed you were broken. If you knew the truth, you'd fight against it, and they'd see the power leaking through. She died to make you invisible long enough to survive. The revelation hit Mira like a physical blow. Her mother had died not just to save her life, but to sell the lie completely. To make sure even Mira believed she was worthless. It still hurt, Mira thought, this time directing it only at her father. Every day, it hurt, and you could have made it easier. You could have shown me love, given me dignity, something to hold on to. Instead, you treated me like I was less than nothing. Garrick had no answer. His secrets floating above him told the complete story. Relief when his daughter was chosen for the ritual. Plans to request a better den once she was gone. Shame buried so deep he'd almost convinced himself he felt nothing. What will you do? Damon asked quietly, the first words he'd spoken since the trial of truth began. You hold the power of judgment now. The red moon acknowledges you as lunar sage. Your word becomes pack law in this moment. Mira looked around the circle, at faces she'd known her entire life. Some showed genuine remorse wolves, who'd been unkind but not cruel, who'd believed the lies they were told. Others, like Lyric, showed only fury at being exposed, already planning revenge if given the chance. And then there was Baldric, the architect of her mother's murder, looking at her with barely concealed hatred even in defeat. I could kill them, Mira thought, and felt her wolf's agreement. The power was there, thrumming through her veins. One word and the moon's judgment would burn them to ash. It would be justice. Justice and vengeance are different things, Damon said, somehow sensing her thoughts through their bond. One rebuilds, the other just leaves more ashes. What would you do? I'm not the lunar sage. This isn't my judgment to make. He moved closer, his hand resting on her wolf's head. But I can tell you that the packs need lunar sages not just for their power, but for their wisdom. For their ability to see what we can't and choose the harder right over the easier wrong. Mira closed her silver eyes, feeling the red moon's power coursing through her, feeling her mother's love woven into the very binding she'd broken, feeling the weight of all the wolves waiting for her words. When she opened them, her decision was made. Baldric Emberclaw. For the murder of Elara Ashford, for conspiracy with rogues, for theft from pack funds, and for attempting to execute me to hide your crimes, I strip you of your title and position. You are exiled from Emberclaw Pack, marked as Oathbreaker. No pack may take you in without facing the Red Moon's judgment themselves. As she spoke, the moon's light wrapped around Baldric like chains, and a mark appeared on his forehead, a broken crown, visible to any wolf who looked at him. He'd never lead again, never be trusted again. Garrick Ashford. For complicity in murder, for abandoning your daughter in her suffering, For choosing comfort over courage, you are stripped of your beta rank. You may remain in the pack as Omega, experiencing firsthand the treatment you allowed me to endure. Perhaps you'll learn what you cost me." Her father's cry of anguish echoed across the clearing as his wolf rank visibly diminished, his posture shifting as the hierarchical magic that governed packs rearranged itself around him. Soren Blackwater and Lyric Blackwater. For systematic abuse, for murder covered as accident, for poisoning and torture of those weaker than yourselves exile. And if I ever hear of you harming another Omega in any pack, I will hunt you myself." The twins fled before the moon's mark could fully form, racing into the forest with their secrets exposed and their reputations destroyed. "As for the rest of you," Mira's mental voice softened slightly, "you believed lies, but you didn't create them. You followed a corrupt leader, but corruption is hard to see from the inside. I don't forgive the cruelty I endured. But I acknowledge that most of you were tools, not architects." She turned in a slow circle, making eye contact with every wolf present. Emberclaw Pack needs new leadership. Someone who will value all wolves, not just the strong. Someone who remembers that today's Omega might be tomorrow's lunar sage. "The pack is yours," someone called out. "You're the strongest among us now. You should lead." "No," Mira said firmly. "I'm not staying." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even Damon looked surprised. "This pack took everything from me, my mother, my dignity, 3 years of my life. You don't get to keep me just because you now realize I'm valuable." She looked at Vesper, grandmother. "Will you lead them? Will you teach them what the old ways really meant?" "I'm too old," Vesper began. "You're the only one I trust, please." The elderly wolf looked at her granddaughter for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "For you, child. I'll hold this pack together until they learn to be better than they were. Then my judgment is complete." Mira's wolf turned to face Damon. "I renounce my ties to Emberclaw Pack. I choose Stormcrown territory. I choose my mate." The words hung in the air, a formal declaration that couldn't be taken back. Damon's human form shuddered, his wolf clearly close to the surface. "The moon bears witness," he said roughly. "Mira Ashford is claimed by Damon Stormcrown. Any who dispute this claim will answer to me." Silence. No one was foolish enough to challenge an Alpha King. The red moon began to fade as dawn approached, its judgment complete. The ritual was over. Mira had survived all 3 trials: endurance, transformation, and truth. She shifted back to human form, suddenly aware that she was naked in front of the entire pack. Damon was there instantly, wrapping his jacket around her shoulders, his touch gentle despite the violence he was clearly capable of. "Come," he said softly. "Let's get you away from here." As they walked toward his convoy, Vesper caught up to them, pressing a bag into Mira's hands. "Your mother's things, the real history of our bloodline. You'll need them." "Thank you," Mira whispered, "for everything, for keeping her secrets, for believing in me." "Thank your mother," Vesper said. "I just kept watch over what she planted." She cupped Mira's face, quote, "Make her proud, child. Show the world what lunar sages were always meant to be." As dawn broke over the Emberclaw territory, Mira climbed into the Alpha King's vehicle and didn't look back. She'd survived the ritual everyone said would kill her, and now, covered in the Alpha King's mark and claimed as his mate, she was about to discover that surviving was only the beginning. Stormcrown territory was nothing like the Emberclaw Packlands. Mira had known her entire life. Where Emberclaw had been modest wooden structures scattered through forest clearings, Stormcrown was a fortress city carved into the mountains themselves. Obsidian towers rose from living stone, connected by bridges that seemed to float on mist. Waterfalls cascaded between structures, their roar a constant reminder of nature's power harnessed but never tamed. The vehicle convoy had traveled for 2 days, during which Damon maintained a careful distance that Mira both appreciated and found frustrating. Their fated mate bond hummed between them constantly. Now she could feel his wolf's protective vigilance, could sense when his attention focused on her, even when he was in another vehicle. But he hadn't touched her since that moment in the circle, hadn't pushed for the marking that would complete their bond. "He's afraid," said Kira, a female beta who'd been assigned as Mira's escort and guide. She was younger than Mira, maybe 19, with rust-colored hair and kind eyes. The Alpha King, I mean. He spent 5 years searching for his fated mate, and now that he's found you, he's terrified of doing something wrong. They stood on one of the floating bridges, looking out over the vast territory of Prasapati. Hundreds of wolves moved through the streets below, working, training, living. Mira had never seen so many wolves in one place. I don't understand, Mira said. He's the Alpha King. What could he possibly be afraid of? That you'll reject him. Kira said simply. You didn't choose him because you wanted to. You chose him because Emberclaw was torturing you. He knows the difference. He wants you to want him, not just need him. The words settled into Mira's chest, rearranging her understanding of the powerful wolf who'd claimed her. She'd been so focused on her own transformation that she hadn't considered his perspective, that he might see himself as her only escape rather than her genuine choice. Cries. The Luna Tower is prepared for you, Kira continued, gesturing to a spire that caught the afternoon light like captured starlight. It's traditionally reserved for the Alpha King's mate, but he said you can stay there without any expectations. Take your time. Learn about your bloodline. Train with the lunar sage texts we've preserved. You have lunar sage texts here? Mira's heart jumped. Vesper's bag contained her mother's personal writings, but actual historical texts. Stormcrown was founded by a wolf who was saved by a lunar sage healer, Kira explained. When the other packs voted to hunt them, Stormcrown abstained. We've been guardians of their knowledge for 3 centuries, waiting for the day one might return. She smiled. The Alpha King's been maintaining that archive since he was 16. Some say he always believed you'd come. They climbed the spiral staircase to the Luna Tower's main chamber, and Mira's breath caught. The circular room had a glass ceiling open to the sky, bookshelves lining every wall, filled with leather-bound volumes that radiated age and power. A writing desk sat by a window overlooking the entire territory. The bed was draped in silver and midnight blue moon colors. It's too much, Mira whispered, overwhelmed. It's exactly what you deserve, Damon's voice came from the doorway. He'd changed from travel clothes into formal attire black and silver that marked his rank. But his golden eyes held uncertainty she'd never seen before. May I come in? Mira nodded, suddenly nervous. They hadn't been alone since the ritual. He entered slowly, keeping distance between them. I want to be clear about something. This tower, this territory, everything I have, it's yours, regardless of whether you choose to complete our mate bond. You're Lunar Sage. That makes you equal in rank to any Alpha King. You owe me nothing. I chose you, Mira said quietly. In front of my entire pack, I chose you. You chose safety. There's a difference. He moved to the window, looking out at his territory. I've dreamed of finding my fated mate since I was old enough to understand what it meant. But I never imagined finding her, bound in silver, being tortured by her own pack, having to choose me because staying would mean death. So what do you want? Mira asked, moving closer. For me to pretend I would have chosen you even if I wasn't desperate? I want you to have time to know me before deciding if I'm worth choosing. He finally looked at her, and the raw honesty in his expression made her chest ache. I want you to see me as something other than your only escape. When you complete our bond, if you complete it, I want it to be because you want me, not because you needed me. The vulnerability in those words cracked something open in Mira's chest. Here was the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories, and he was afraid she'd feel obligated to love him. Damon, she said softly, and the sound of his name from her lips made him visibly shudder. Place. I've spent my whole life being told I was worthless, that I should be grateful for scraps of basic dignity. Don't you dare stand there and offer me everything while apologizing for it. Don't you dare treat my choice like it doesn't matter just because I made it while desperate. I'm not. Yes, you are. She moved right up to him, close enough to feel his warmth. You're discounting my choice because it wasn't made under perfect conditions. But here's what you need to understand. I didn't know you were my mate when I told you to stay in that circle. I didn't know what you were to me when I felt safe with you standing beside me. The bond revealed itself after I'd already decided you were worth trusting. Potters. His hands clenched at his sides, clearly fighting not to reach for her. Mira, I'm not ready to complete the bond, she continued honestly. You're right about that. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not being crushed under someone else's cruelty. But don't mistake not being ready for not wanting. There's a difference. Something blazed in his golden eyes, Hope and hunger and desperate restraint all mixed together. Then take your time, train, learn. Become everything you were meant to be. I've waited 5 years. I can wait longer. What if I said I don't want to wait alone? The words escaped before she could second guess them. What if I said I want you to teach me? To train with me? To let me know you while I'm figuring myself out? I'd say yes so fast it would make your head spin, he admitted roughly. But I need you to understand, my wolf is barely controlled around you. It wants to mark you, claim you, keep you safe from everything that ever hurt you. If I'm close to you every day, then you'll have to practice control, Mira said with more confidence than she felt. Because I'm not hiding in this tower while you stay away out of some misguided sense of honor. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to give us a real chance, then I need to see all of you, including the parts that aren't perfectly controlled. And a low growl rumbled through his chest. You're playing with fire, little moon. Good, she said. I've been cold my entire life. Maybe it's time I learned to burn. Tension between them was thick enough to choke on. Finally, Damon stepped back, putting deliberate distance between them. Tomorrow morning. Training grounds at dawn. I'll teach you how to use your lunar sage abilities. But Mira? He paused at the door. If at any point this becomes too much, if you need space, you tell me. Promise me. I promise. After he left, Mira sank into the reading chair by the window, her heart racing. She'd just challenged the Alpha King to spend every day with her, while they both fought against a mate bond that wanted to complete itself. Either she was brave, or completely insane, possibly both. She pulled out her mother's writings, finding a passage she'd read during the journey. The lunar sage bond is different from normal mate bonds, my darling. Where others are drawn together by fate alone, we choose our mates with the moon's blessing. The bond will call to you, yes, but you must answer with your whole heart, not just your need. A lunar sage, who bonds without true choice, becomes as much a prisoner as one who never bonds at all. Choose wisely, choose honestly, and when you choose, hold nothing back. Mira looked out at the storm-crowned territory, at the wolves moving peacefully below, at the mountains standing guard over it all. Somewhere in this fortress city, Damon was probably pacing his chambers, fighting his wolf's instinct to return to her. She smiled, feeling her own wolf stir with anticipation. Tomorrow, her real training would begin. Not just in lunar sage powers, but in understanding the complicated, powerful, surprisingly vulnerable wolf who was fated to be hers. If she was brave enough to claim him. Dawn at Stormcrown came with mist and mountain silence. Mira stood in the center of the training grounds, her breath visible in the cold air, wearing the simple training clothes Kira had provided. Around her, the grounds were empty. Damon had cleared them for privacy. Good. You're early. His voice came from behind her, and she turned to find him in similar training attire. His scarred chest bare despite the cold. Shows discipline. Shows I couldn't sleep, Mira admitted. The mate bond had kept her awake, humming with awareness of his location somewhere in the fortress. She'd felt when he finally stopped pacing around midnight, felt when he woke before dawn. That will fade once you learn to shield, he said, moving into the circle with her. First lesson. The mate bond is useful, but without control, it becomes a distraction. You need to learn how to mute it when necessary. I'm CO? Mute it? The thought made her wolf whimper. Closing curtain. Mute. Like closing curtains, the light is still there, but it's not overwhelming. He stood across from her, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his eyes. Close your eyes. Feel the bond between us. She did. And immediately the connection blazed brighter. She could feel his wolf's restless energy, his barely controlled desire to close the distance between them, his determination to maintain proper boundaries. Now imagine a door, Damon continued, his voice dropping to that commanding tone that made her spine straighten instinctively. Not a wall, walls block everything. A door you can open or close as needed. Can you see it? In her mind's eye, Mira pictured a simple wooden door standing between her and the golden warmth of their bond. Yes. Close it halfway. Not all the way. Never all the way. Or you'll panic your wolf. Just halfway. Just halfway. She imagined the door swinging partially closed, and suddenly the bond's intensity dimmed to a manageable level. She could still feel him, but it wasn't overwhelming anymore. Good, Damon said, and she heard approval in his voice. That's your first shield. Practice it until it becomes instinct. Now open your eyes. 9 etters. When she did, he'd moved closer. Close enough that she could smell pine and winter storms on his skin. Second lesson, he said quietly. Lunar sages don't just see truth, they can project it. Make others see what's real instead of what they believe. He pulled a knife from his belt. Tell me what you see. A knife. Silver blade. Leather handle. Wrong. He turned it over in his hand. You're seeing what I want you to see. Look deeper. With your wolf's eyes, not your human assumptions. Mira let her wolf rise closer to the surface, and her vision shifted. Suddenly, she could see beneath the surface of things, and the knife wasn't just a knife. It was spelled, glamored to appear as a weapon when it was actually a rose carved from wood, she breathed. How? Pack magic. Useful for deception. He set the wooden rose on the ground between them. Now make me see the truth. Project your wolf's vision onto mine. I don't know how. Yes, you do. The power is already there. You just need to trust it. He locked eyes with her. Show me. Mira focused on what her wolf could see the truth beneath the glamour. She imagined pushing that vision outward, forcing it into Damon's perception. For a moment, nothing happened. Then his eyes widened. There, he said roughly. You did it. I can see the rose now, not the knife. Do you understand what this means? No one can lie to you. No one can deceive you with magic. And you can make others see through deceptions too. The implications were staggering. This is why the alphas feared lunar sages, partially. But there's more. He picked up the wooden rose and tucked it behind her ear with surprising gentleness. You can also project truth the other way, make liars see their own deceptions, force corrupt wolves to face what they've done. It's not mind control. It's enforced honesty. That's terrifying. That's justice. He stepped back. Third lesson, combat. You're powerful, but power without skill is just a target. Shift. Mira shifted smoothly. The transformation effortless, now without the binding suppressing her. Her silver-white wolf stood ready, moon-marked and shimmering. Damon shifted too, his massive storm-dark wolf circling her slowly. You're smaller, his mental voice observed, but size isn't everything. You're faster, more agile. Use it. Without warning, he lunged. Mira barely dodged, his jaws snapping where her throat had been a second before. Her heart hammered as she scrambled away. Don't run, he commanded. You're not prey. You're predator. Act like it. He came at her again, and this time Mira met him. She ducked under his attack and twisted, raking her claws across his flank not deep enough to seriously injure, but enough to draw blood. Damon's mental laugh echoed in her mind. Better, again. They sparred for an hour, and Mira learned that the Alpha King didn't hold back. Every move was calculated to push her, to teach her, to force her beyond what she thought she could do. He was faster than any wolf had a right to be, stronger than seemed possible, but Mira had advantages he lacked. Her lunar sage abilities let her see his attacks before he made them brief flashes of intention that gave her split-second warnings. And her smaller size meant she could slip through openings his larger form couldn't exploit. You're learning, Damon observed after she'd successfully countered one of his attacks. But you're still fighting like you expect to lose. Stop apologizing with every move. I'm not. You are. Every dodge is defensive. Every counter is hesitant. You're still the Omega who believed she was worthless. He pinned her suddenly, his weight crushing her into the ground, jaws near her throat. If I were your enemy, you'd be dead. Do you know why? Because I'm weaker. Because you refuse to fight with your full strength. He released her and stepped back. Shift. Now. Mira shifted back to human form, breathing hard. Damon remained in wolf form, his golden eyes burning into hers. I've seen you survive silver torture and complete the Red Moon ritual, he continued. I've watched you judge an entire pack without flinching. It's power. But here, in training, you pull your strikes. You hesitate. Why? I don't want to hurt you, Mira admitted quietly. His shift was instant, his human form suddenly in her space, hands gripping her shoulders. You can't hurt me. I'm the Alpha King. I've survived challenges from wolves twice your size with 3 times your experience. But more importantly, his voice gentled, You need to stop protecting everyone else at your own expense. That's Omega thinking. You're not Omega anymore. You're Lunar Sage. You're my equal. Act like it. The words hit harder than any physical blow. He was right. Even here, even after everything, she was still holding back, still trying to make herself smaller, less threatening, less. Stop, Damon said firmly. I can feel your thoughts spiraling through our bond. Tomorrow, we try again. But tonight, I want you to do something for me. What? Go to the archive. Read about what lunar sages actually were, power and Don Maris. Not what the packs made them into through fear, but what they truly represented. He released her shoulders. You can't become what you don't understand. As Mira returned to Luna Tower to clean up, his words echoed in her mind. She'd survived the ritual, escaped her pack, and found her fated mate. But survival wasn't the same as living. Escaping wasn't the same as being free. She needed to stop being the Omega who survived, and start becoming the lunar sage she was meant to be. And that transformation would require something she'd never had before, believing she deserved to take up space in the world. 3 weeks of intensive training had transformed Mira in ways she was still processing. Her wolf form moved with confidence now, her lunar sage abilities growing sharper with each day. She could project truth, see through deceptions, and most unsettling, she discovered she could communicate directly with the moon itself during the full moon phases. The ancient texts in Stormcrown's archive had revealed much about her bloodline. Lunar sages weren't just powerful wolves. They were mediators between the moon goddess and the packs, judges who could see through any lie, healers who could mend not just bodies, but the bonds between wolves. They'd been essential to pack society for millennia, keeping alphas accountable and protecting the vulnerable. No wonder the corrupt alphas had worked so hard to eliminate them. But the real world had a way of interrupting progress. The Council of Alphas has demanded your presence, Kira announced one morning, bursting into the archive where Mira had been studying. They're invoking the Accords of Verification. Mira's blood ran cold. What does that mean? Damon entered behind Kira, his face grim. It means every alpha in the Northern Territories wants to verify that you're actually Lunar Sage. They're calling it a formality. But what they really want is to see if you're a threat they need to eliminate. Can they do that? Just demand I appear? The Accords are ancient law, Damon explained, moving to stand beside her. Power. Any wolf claiming rare bloodline status can be challenged to prove it. If you refuse, they can legally declare you rogue, which means any wolf can hunt you without consequence. So I have to go prove myself to a bunch of alphas who already want me dead? Mira's voice was sharper than intended. That seems fair. It's a trap, Kira said bluntly. Everyone knows it. They're hoping you'll fail the verification, or refuse to attend, so they can justify coming after you. Then I'll succeed. Mira closed the ancient text she'd been reading. When and where? 3 days. Neutral territory in the Ashen Grounds. Damon's jaw clenched. I'll bring an entire guard. No, Mira stood facing him. If I arrive with an army, it looks like I need protection, like I'm weak. You're not going alone. I won't be alone. I'll have you beside me. She softened her tone at his obvious distress, but not an army, just us. I need to show them I'm not afraid. You should be afraid, Damon growled. Half the alphas on that council would rather see you dead than acknowledge a power they can't control. Then let them see what happens when they try. The mate bond flared between them, his fear for her safety colliding with his pride in her courage. Finally, he nodded. Just us. But Mira, if anything goes wrong, then you'll be there. She placed her hand over his heart, feeling it thunder beneath her palm. That's all I need. The Ashen Grounds lived up to their name, a vast circle of white stone where no grass grew. No trees provided shelter. Ancient pack law stated that all major gatherings happened here, on ground that belonged to no single pack. 7 thrones formed a semicircle, each occupied by a territorial alpha. Mira recognized none of them except through reputation. Alpha Thane of the Northern Reach, rumored to have killed his own father for the position. Alpha Coraline of the Western Forests, who'd expanded her territory through strategic marriages and well-timed assassinations. Alpha Magnus of the Eastern Shore, old enough to remember when lunar sages were still hunted openly. Mira Ashford. Alpha Thane began, his voice carrying across the grounds. You stand accused of fraudulently claiming lunar sage bloodline. How do you plead? End fair as letter 2. Piece of Nastor. I stand accused of nothing, Mira corrected, her voice steady despite her hammering heart. I am lunar sage. The red moon ritual confirmed it. Any who doubt my bloodline are welcome to test me. Convenient that the only witnesses to your supposed ritual were your former pack and the Alpha King, your fated mate. Coraline's smile was poisonous. Forgive us if we find that potentially biased. Then stop talking about it and test her. Damon's voice cut through the political posturing. He stood just outside the council circle, as protocol demanded. Only the accused could stand in the center. You have the ancient verification methods. Use them. Very well. Magnus stood, his ancient bones creaking. The first test, truth sight. A lunar sage can see through any deception. He held up a chalice. Tell me, girl, is this cup filled with water or poison? Mira let her wolf's vision sharpen, looking beneath surface appearances. The liquid in the chalice writhed with dark magic, not poison exactly, but something designed to cause pain without killing. A test to see if she'd lie to avoid drinking it. Neither, she said clearly. It spelled water, designed to cause agony to test my honesty. I see through your deception, Alpha Magnus. Don't waste my time with games. Surprised murmurs rippled through the gathered alphas. Magnus's eyes narrowed, but he set the chalice down. The second test, truth projection. Make me see something I believe to be false. Gladly. Mira focused on Magnus, pushing her wolf's vision into his mind. She showed him the truth of himself, not the dignified alpha he believed himself to be, but the frightened old wolf terrified of losing relevance. She showed him his own mortality, his own irrelevance in a changing world. Magnus stumbled backward, his face pale. Enough. You've proven that ability. The third test, Thane interrupted quickly. Moon speech. Lunar sages could commune directly with the moon. Show us. It was late afternoon, the moon wasn't even visible yet. They were hoping she'd fail, that she'd need the moon to actually be present. But Mira had learned something during her training. The moon was always there. Visible or not, its power touched the earth constantly. She closed her eyes and reached out with her wolf's consciousness, searching for that silver presence that had spoken to her during the red moon ritual. I'm here, she called silently. Show them I'm not lying. For a long moment, nothing happened. The alphas began to whisper, victory creeping into their voices. Then the sky darkened. Clouds that hadn't existed a moment before rolled in, thick and fast. The afternoon sun dimmed as if night was falling. And there, breaking through the clouds, the moon. Full, silver, and radiant, appearing in the middle of the day like a second Sunday. You called, daughter. A voice echoed in every mind present, not Mira's voice, but something far more ancient and powerful. And I answer, this wolf is mine. She is lunar sage, blessed of my light, speaker of my truths. Any who harm her answer to me. The moon's light focused into a beam that fell directly on Mira, and her silver-white fur began to glow, as if she'd captured starlight itself. Around her, every alpha dropped to their knees instinctively, unable to resist the direct presence of the moon's power. Do not test my patience again, the moon's voice continued. The lunar sages return not by your permission, but by my will. Accept this or face my judgment. Any you, for you know. The light faded, the clouds cleared. The moon vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving only afternoon sun and stunned silence. Mira opened her eyes to find every alpha staring at her with expressions ranging from awe to terror. Even Damon looked shocked. I believe, Magnus said shakily. The verification is complete. Agreed, Coraline managed, though her face was pale. The council recognizes Mira Ashford as legitimate lunar sage bloodline. Furthermore, Thane added quickly, we acknowledge her rank as equal to any territorial alpha. She may claim territory, form packs, and I claim nothing, Mira interrupted. I'm not interested in territory or forming packs, but I am interested in something else. She looked at each alpha in turn. I'm interested in justice. In reforming the laws that allow omegas to be tortured, that let the strong abuse the weak, that turn designation into destiny. You want to change our entire system. Coraline said flatly. I want to evolve it. The old ways are dying. You can die with them, or you can adapt. Mira's voice carried across the ashen grounds with authority she'd never felt before. The moon has spoken. Lunar sages have returned. Percent. The choice is yours. Work with us to build something better, or stand against us and face judgment. I am 7. The threat, if it could even be called that, hung in the air. These were alphas used to being the ultimate authority. Now they faced something their predecessors had tried to eradicate for good reason, a power they couldn't control or dominate. A compromise, Magnus said finally. The council remains, but we add lunar sage representation. You'll have a voice in pack law and territorial disputes. In exchange, you work within the system to create change, not outside it. Mira looked at Damon, who gave her a subtle nod. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. Agreed, she said. But understand this, I won't be silent. I won't be decorative. And if the council resists necessary changes, if wolves continue to suffer under outdated hierarchies, she let her power surface slightly, the air around her shimmering with moonlight. Then the moon's judgment won't be as gentle as mine. The alphas exchanged uneasy glances but nodded acceptance. They had no choice. The moon itself had declared for her. As the gathering dispersed, Damon moved to her side. You just threatened the entire council of alphas. I did. Mira watched the alphas retreat to their territories. Was it too much? Perfect. His voice held wonder and pride. The Omega, who couldn't fight back, just made 7 alphas bow to her will. You're magnificent. The mate bond flared with his genuine admiration, and Mira felt something shift inside her. This wasn't the desperate gratitude of being rescued. This was mutual respect, equal power, genuine partnership. Damon, she said quietly, turning to face him. I think I'm ready. His eyes blazed gold. Ready for what? To stop waiting. To stop holding back. She stepped closer, her hand finding his. To complete our bond, power. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Damon's entire body went rigid, his wolf clearly straining for control. You're sure? His voice was rough. Not because you're grateful, or feel obligated, or... I'm sure because I know you now. Because I've trained with you, learned from you, seen you vulnerable and powerful and everything in between. She cupped his face with her free hand. I'm sure because you're not just my escape or my fated mate. You're my choice. Freely made, no desperation, no obligation. Just want. Something broke in his control. His arms wrapped around her, pulling her against him, and his lips crashed onto hers, with all the restrained hunger of the past 3 weeks. The mate bond exploded between them, no longer muted or controlled, blazing like sunlight breaking through clouds. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Damon rested his forehead against hers. My chambers, tonight. I want to mark you properly, Mira. Make you mine in every way that matters. Yes, she whispered. But Damon, you need to understand something. What? I'm not just yours, you're also mine. She let her power surface, her eyes glowing silver. Equal claim, equal bond. That's the lunar sage way. His grin was pure, predatory satisfaction. I wouldn't have it any other way. As they left the ashen grounds together, Mira realized she'd come full circle. The Omega, who'd been chosen for death, had become the lunar sage who'd faced down a council of alphas. And tonight, she would complete her bond with the Alpha King, not as his subordinate or his prize, but as his equal. Sometimes the greatest power wasn't surviving what tried to break you, it was choosing what came next. The marking ceremony was private, just Mira and Damon in his chambers as the full moon rose. The bond completion was everything she'd imagined and nothing she could have prepared for. When his teeth sank into the traditional marking spot at the junction of her neck and shoulder, the mate bond didn't just complete it, exploded into full existence, binding their souls so thoroughly that she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. And when she marked him in return, his alpha composure finally shattered, and she discovered that the fearsome Alpha King could be just as vulnerable, just as desperate, just as wholly hers as she was his. They spent the night learning each other in ways that went far beyond the physical. Through their completed bond, Mira felt everything: his fierce protectiveness, his wonder at finding her, his determination to be worthy of her choice. and he felt her strength, her growing confidence, her absolute certainty that choosing him had been right. As dawn broke, they stood on his balcony, his arms wrapped around her from behind, both of them marked and mated, and finally, completely whole. "No regrets?" he murmured against her hair. "None," she said, then paused. "Actually, one." And she felt his body tense. "What?" "I wish I could tell my mother," Mira's voice caught. "I wish she could see that her sacrifice worked, that I survived, that I found you." "She knows," Damon said softly. "The moon goddess knows, and your mother's spirit is with her. She knows, Mira, and she's proud." They stood like that for a long moment, watching the sun rise over storm-crowned territory. Everything felt perfect, peaceful, right. Which was, of course, when Kira came running. "Alpha King," she shouted from below the balcony, her voice pitched with urgency that immediately set both their wolves on edge. "Mira, you need to come now." They dressed quickly, Damon pulling on clothes while Mira wrapped herself in one of his shirts, the mark on her neck visible for all to see. When they reached the courtyard, they found Kira with 3 wolves Mira didn't recognize. They were emaciated, hollow-eyed, and they moved wrong like puppets with cut strings. "They came from the western border," Kira explained, her voice shaking. 3 different patrols, all attacked. "These are the survivors." "But," she trailed off helplessly. "But what?" Damon demanded. One of the wolves looked up, and Mira gasped. His eyes were empty, not blind, but vacant. Like looking into windows of an abandoned house. "Their wolves are gone," Mira whispered, horror crawling up her spine. "Not dormant, not suppressed, gone." "How is that possible?" Damon moved toward the afflicted wolves, but Mira grabbed his arm. Don't get too close." She'd read about this in the ancient texts, in passages so terrifying she'd hoped they were just legends. "It's the void." "What void?" "An ancient darkness that consumes wolf spirits." Mira's voice was steady, despite the fear clawing at her insides. "The text said it appears during times of great change, feeding on wolf essence until it grows strong enough to consume entire packs. The lunar sages were the only ones who could fight it, because our light burns darkness." Damon finished grimly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "How do we kill it?" "We don't. I do." She turned to face him, seeing the denial already forming. "Damon, listen to me. The void specifically targets wolf spirits. You and your warriors would just be feeding it, making it stronger. But lunar sage light, it's moon magic, not wolf essence. I'm the only one who can face this." "Absolutely not." His alpha command rolled through the courtyard, making every wolf present drop their eyes in submission. Every wolf except Mira, who met his gaze steadily. "You don't command me, mate. We're equals, remember?" She softened her tone. "This is why the lunar sages existed. Not to rule packs or hoard knowledge, but to protect wolves from threats they can't fight themselves." Through their completed bond, she felt his terror, his desperate need to keep her safe, his wolf howling at the thought of her in danger. But underneath, she also felt his understanding. He knew she was right. "Then I'm coming with you," he said finally, his voice rough with barely controlled emotion. "Not to fight, I understand, I'd just be feeding it, but to witness. To be there in case," his voice cracked slightly, "in case something goes wrong. Deal?" She squeezed his hand. "But we need to go now. The longer it feeds, the stronger it gets." She dunously. Kira stepped forward. "I'm coming too. And before you argue," she held up a hand as both Mira and Damon opened their mouths. "I'm not going to fight. But you'll need someone to help the survivors, to guide the hollowed wolves to safety if this works." Mira looked at the 3 empty-eyed wolves and nodded. "Fine, but you stay back. Far back." They gathered supplies quickly, though what supplies could help against an entity that consumed souls, Mira didn't know. She wore her mother's pendant, carried the wooden box of lunar sage texts, and felt the weight of Damon's mark on her neck like a blessing. The journey to the western border took hours through dense forest. As they traveled, more hollowed wolves appeared, wandering aimlessly, their eyes vacant, their bodies moving on instinct alone. Each one they passed made Mira's resolve strengthen. This thing had to be stopped. "How many?" she asked Kira quietly. "At least 20 that we've found, but based on the patrol schedules." Kira's voice trailed off. Quote, "There could be 50 or more." 50 wolves with their spirits consumed, 50 families destroyed. The number made Mira's blood run cold. They smelled the void before they saw it, a wrong smell, like lightning and decay mixed together. The forest around them began to change, trees withering and gray, grass dead beneath their feet. And then they reached the clearing. In the center stood something that had once been a wolf. It was massive, easily twice Damon's wolf size, but wrong in every way that mattered. Its form seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, and where its eyes should be, there were only empty voids that seemed to pull at the souls of anyone who looked too long. Shadow and smoke writhed around it like a living cloak, and the air near it felt cold enough to freeze bone. Around it, 6 more hollowed wolves knelt, former pack members who were now just empty shells. "Lunar Sage," the void spoke, and its voice came from everywhere and nowhere, sliding into minds like oil. "Finally. I've been feeding on lesser wolves, growing stronger, waiting for one of you to return. Your light will make me invincible." "My light will destroy you," Mira said, shifting into her silver-white wolf form. The pendant her mother left her blazed against her fur, catching moonlight that shouldn't exist in the afternoon shadows. "So confident, but you're untrained, newly awakened. You don't even understand the full extent of your power." The void circled the clearing's edge, its presence like ice water in her veins. "I've consumed hundreds of your kind over millennia. What makes you think you're different?" "Because I'm not fighting alone." Mira let her consciousness expand, reaching through the mate bond to Damon, through pack bonds to every wolf in Stormcrown territory, through the mystical connection all wolves shared to every pack in the Northern Territories. "You consume individuals, but I fight, connected," she howled, and her voice carried on moonlight itself. Every wolf who heard it, whether in Stormcrown, in distant territories, even the hollowed shells around her responded instinctively. Their howls joined hers, creating a symphony of pack song that the void couldn't consume because it wasn't individual wolf essence. It was collective will, collective hope, collective defiance. The moon responded to that collective howl, its light blazing down with intensity that hadn't been seen since the age of the lunar sages. The sky darkened as clouds parted, and the moon shone through full and silver, despite it being the wrong phase, wrong time of day. Mira became a conduit, channeling that light through her body, amplifying it with her own power, directing it with surgical precision at the void's core. "No," the void shrieked, its form beginning to unravel. "This isn't possible. You're just one wolf." "I'm not just one wolf. I'm every wolf who refuses to submit to darkness. I'm every Omega who survived when they were supposed to die. I'm every victim of your hunger who deserves justice." Mira's voice resonated with power that made the earth tremble. "I am Lunar Sage, daughter of the moon, and you end here. Power." The moonlight intensified, pouring through her like liquid silver fire. It hurt, goddess. It hurt burning through her veins, threatening to consume her from the inside out. But she held on, channeling more and more power into the beam of light that pinned the void in place. Through their bond, she felt Damon's terror and pride warring, felt him wanting to intervene, to protect her, held back only by understanding that his interference would doom them all. The void writhed and screamed as moonlight burned through it. And as it died, something extraordinary happened. The stolen wolf spirits it had consumed began to emerge. Wisps of silver light, pulled free from the darkness, flowing back to the hollowed wolves around the clearing. The 6 kneeling wolves gasped as their spirits returned, their eyes clearing, their forms regaining the life that had been stripped away. And beyond the clearing, Mira felt the same thing happening to all the other victims. Spirits rushing back to bodies, wolves becoming whole again. But the void wasn't finished. With a final desperate lunge, it surged toward Mira, trying to consume her light before it could be completely destroyed. Damon roared, his wolf form launching forward despite knowing he couldn't help, unable to watch his mate face death without trying to intervene. "No!" Mira commanded, and the word carried such power that Damon froze mid-leap, held by her will alone. "This is my fight!" She met the void's charge head-on, her silver-white form blazing like a falling star. When they collided, the impact sent shockwaves across the forest, flattening trees and throwing up clouds of dirt. For a moment, Mira was surrounded by absolute darkness. The void had wrapped around her, trying to smother her light, to consume her essence, to add her power to its own. But Mira had something the void had never encountered before: a completed mate bond with an alpha king, connections to thousands of wolves across the territories, and her mother's sacrifice woven into her very soul. She wasn't alone. She had never been alone. The pendant around her neck erupted with blinding radiance, and she felt her mother's presence, not just a memory, but an actual touch of spirit from beyond. And through that touch, she felt all the lunar sages who had come before, lending their power across the veil between life and death. "I am the light that darkness cannot touch," Mira said, and her voice held echoes of 1,000 lunar sages. "I am the hope that cannot be extinguished. I am the love that transcends death, and I am the moon's chosen. You have no power here." The moonlight exploding from her didn't just burn the void, it erased it, completely and utterly, as if it had never existed. The darkness shattered like glass. And where it had been, there was only purifying silver light. When the light finally faded, Mira collapsed. Damon was there instantly, shifting to human form and catching her before she hit the ground. Mira, stay with me, please." "I'm okay," she managed, though her voice was weak. That took a lot." Around them, wolves were stirring the victims of the void, now restored, looking around in confusion and wonder. Their spirits had returned. They were whole again. "You did it," Damon breathed, cradling her close. "You destroyed an ancient evil. You saved them all." "Power. We did it," Mira corrected weakly. "All of us. That's the point. Together, we're stronger than any darkness." Kira rushed over with water and blankets, helping to care for the restored wolves. They would need time to recover, to process what had happened to them. But they would recover. They would survive. Because Mira had proven what the lunar sages had always known: that light, when shared, multiplied. That connection was stronger than corruption. That hope, once ignited, couldn't be extinguished. As Damon carried her back toward Stormcrown, Mira rested her head against his chest and allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. She'd faced down an ancient evil and won. Not because she was the strongest fighter, but because she'd understood something the void never could. She'd understood that true power came not from consuming others, but from connecting with them. 3 months later, Mira stood before a gathering unlike any the Northern Territories had ever seen. The Council of Alphas had convened at Stormcrown, along with representatives from every pack: alphas, betas, deltas, gammas, and for the first time in history, omegas who'd been given equal voice. The laws were changing. Slowly, with resistance and argument and compromise, but changing nonetheless. Designation-based abuse was now punishable by exile. Omegas had the right to refuse dangerous assignments. Mixed designation councils were being established in every major pack. And most importantly, any Omega who felt threatened in their current pack could request sanctuary in Stormcrown under the Lunar Sage's protection. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. But it was progress. "You've started a revolution," Damon murmured as they watched the council session from the observation gallery. His hand rested on her still flat stomach, where their child grew, the first pup born of a lunar sage and an alpha king in over 3 centuries. "I've started an evolution," Mira corrected. "Revolution tears down, evolution builds up." "Semantics," he said, but he was smiling. "It's below." Alpha Magnus was arguing with an Omega representative about pack resource distribution. The fact that they were arguing as equals, that the Omega's voice carried the same weight as the Alpha's, was revolutionary enough. "Do you ever regret it?" Damon asked quietly. "Staying in this world, dealing with pack politics and ancient prejudices? You could have walked away after destroying the void, lived in peace somewhere." "Peace isn't the absence of conflict," Mira said, leaning back against him. "It's having the strength to face conflict with purpose. Besides," she turned to smile at him, "where you are is where I belong. Equal partners, remember?" "Equal partners," he agreed, pulling her closer. "Though I reserve the right to be annoyingly overprotective when our pup is born, Pash. As long as you remember that our daughter will be raised knowing she's equal to any alpha, regardless of what designation she presents." "Our daughter?" Mother's intuition. Mira placed her hand over his on her stomach. Lunar sages can sense these things. Through their bond, she felt his joy spike, followed immediately by terror. A daughter, a lunar sage daughter. The other alphas are going to lose their minds. Good. Maybe it'll knock some sense into them. They stood like that for a while, watching the council debate, feeling their child grow, planning a future that neither had dreamed possible 6 months ago. Mira thought about the Omega who'd knelt in the silver circle, bound and broken, waiting to die. She thought about her mother's sacrifice, her grandmother's faith, the wolves, who'd tormented her without knowing they were forging the very strength that would eventually change their world. She thought about how the red moon ritual designed to kill her had instead awakened her. How the pack that rejected her had driven her toward the mate who completed her. How every moment of pain and humiliation had been necessary to create the wolf she'd become. She didn't forgive the cruelty, but she understood its purpose in her story. "What are you thinking about?" Damon asked, sensing her thoughts turning inward through their bond. Quote, "I'm thinking about how they said no Omega could survive the red moon ritual," Mira said softly. "How they were so certain I'd die. And instead, you rose covered in the Alpha King's mark and became the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories," Damon finished, pride clear in his voice. "Not the most powerful," Mira corrected. "Just the one willing to use power differently, to protect instead of dominate, to connect instead of consume, to choose hope even when darkness seemed inevitable." She looked out at the gathered wolves below Alphas and Omegas sitting together, planning a future where designation didn't determine destiny, where strength could look like compassion, where power could mean protecting the vulnerable instead of exploiting them. "They were right about one thing, though," she said. Quote, "What's that?" "No Omega survived the red moon ritual." She smiled, her silver eyes catching the afternoon light. "But a lunar sage did, and she's only just begun to show them what that means." Damon laughed, the sound rich and full of love. "Goddess, help them all." "Goddess, help us all," Mira corrected, "because change is never easy, but it's always worth it." As the sun set over storm-crowned territory, painting the obsidian towers in shades of gold and rose, Mira Ashford, former Omega, current lunar sage, Alpha King's mate, and mother-to-be stood with her partner and watched their world transform. She'd survived what should have killed her. She'd risen when she should have fallen. She'd chosen love when hate would have been easier. And in doing so, she'd proven what her mother had always known, that the strongest wolves weren't the ones who dominated others, but the ones who lifted others up. That true power wasn't about consuming light, it was about becoming light. The red moon had risen to judge her, and she'd used its power to judge an entire system, and found it wanting. Now came the hard work of building something better, something that honored all wolves, regardless of designation. Something her daughter would inherit, a world where no Omega would ever have to kneel in a silver circle and pray for a quick death. "Ready to change the world?" Damon asked, offering his hand. Mira took it, their mate marks glowing softly in the fading light. "I already did," she said. "Now I'm just making sure it stays changed." Together, they walked back into the council chambers, equal partners facing an uncertain future, with absolute certainty in each other. The Omega who couldn't survive had become the lunar sage who refused to let anyone else just survive. She would teach them all to thrive. And the moon, watching over her chosen daughter, smiled,